Hello, good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good.
Hey, Cameron. Cameron's my producer. Cameron.
Hi, Cameron.
Hello. Sorry about that. Just give me a minute.
Okay. That's okay. I just get a little nervous just in the moment.
Yeah, no, I had a problem getting into Zoom, so.
It's all right. Technology is wonderful when it works.
Exactly.
When it works, it's great. Yeah.
So Sophia, momentarily, Cameron may even cut me off. He will say stand by. I know you're a pro in this, so.
Oh, good. Yeah, I've been watching some of your videos, so I'm super excited.
Awesome.
It's so lovely and delightful to chat with you this morning.
Awesome.
Right.
So you know what to expect.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
Cameron, we are in your hands.
Yes. And unfortunately, I'm not in my good hands right now. Try to get things going here. I'm so sorry we're late. So I'm just playing commercials right now. I'm terribly sorry.
You know what? Life happens, right? As I always say, life's life.
Okay, it's 8:01 here, so
We'll save the worries for things. Honestly, Cameron, I'm serious when I say that. So yeah, I want to go. I want to be on, but I'm not worth us.
I mean, it's we're not sitting here at 10:30, right? So
yeah. Yet.
Like an issue. I still feel I had some technical difficulties this morning too, so it was I just managed. I like in the nick of time. Literally, my friend Nick helped me out. I was like, that's an interesting little.
Yeah. Shout out to Nick. I'm hearing we're gonna have a shout out to Nick in the show.
I definitely will. He is a lifesaver. Definitely, like literally within 10 minutes of this our call. We finally got the camera to work. So
yeah.
All right.
All right. That's not the one.
Oh, come on.
Right.
Wondering if I should sit a little closer.
I know my face is like really close.
I'm just thinking, I'm like, your face is super close. I'm like, should I be much closer? I don't know. I'm just worried about this lighting because it's like so overhead. But I stuck myself in this little photo booth or like telephone booth so that this way I could talk to you without being like having like people zooming by and just all kinds of things. So
it sounds like you're the female version of like Superman being in the phone booth.
Yes, exactly. This is where all the magic happens. I transform. Everything gets transformed in here. I'm a superhero when I get out of here. And I feel like that's what's going to happen after our, look at you with the Wonder Woman. I love it. It's like my favorite superhero.
Seriously. How can she, oh my God, how can she not be anyway? Like,
Okay, stand by. Here we go.
Okay.
Share your thoughts about the topics, the hosts, and the special guests. You can also leave a suggestion. Then, when you're done, rate the show. The hosts love your feedback.
This is ContactTalkRadio.com. Consciousness in action. And you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Ping.fm, and UpSnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio. Inspiration, brave action, and heartwarming journeys. This is what the Louise H. Reed Show brings you. Now, here's your host, Louise H. Reed.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me once again today for episode 78 of the show. I am your host, Louise H. Reed. With listeners in over 145 countries and millions of iTunes downloads and ongoing podcasts, I'm here on Contact Talk Radio Network each week at this time to talk life and leadership with everyday people doing extraordinary things. People who are examples of taking brave, bold action in pursuit of their dreams and goals and are here to share their journey to help you do the same in yours. Week after week, I express my gratitude to each one of you for showing up and sharing your support and learning from each of my guests that I bring. And so as a way of showing my appreciation for this, I love to give away awesome swag. And so if you want your hands on some of that, simply comment on a podcast episode with the hashtag LadyBossLoyalty and you are automatically entered. There is new swag coming soon. So if you want your hands on that, please comment away and good luck. Before I introduce you to today's guest, I'm going to get personal with you for a moment, in case you don't think that I've been personal enough over various episodes on the show. I would actually like to dedicate this show to my sister, Lucy, who celebrated her 40th birthday last week. 14 years ago, she had a bone marrow transplant and obviously then was fighting for her life. And so what an honor and joy it was to celebrate Lucy's 40 years of life on Saturday, a milestone celebration we never thought we would share with her. And so it is with her on my mind and in my heart that I would also like to share a poem with all of you that both calmed and inspired me through those hard days, weeks, and months. It's brief-ish. Come to the edge, he said. We can't, we're afraid, they responded. Come to the edge, he said. We can't, we will fall, they responded. Come to the edge, he said. And so they came, and he pushed them, and they flew. And so now we know, I hope you like that poem first of all, and we all know we do not come here to listen to Louise natter on at you. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our wonderful guest today. We have with us Sofia Stefou, and I would like to share a little bit about her with you, and then we will jump right on in and meet her. Sofia is a Canadian-bred serial entrepreneur, marketing strategist, actor, and producer. As if that's not enough, she's also the founder of VidaCher, a digital storytelling agency that helps brands and people develop and launch cohesive stories across multiple platforms. In her 19-year career, she has been in executive marketing and sales positions in the US, Canada, and India, where she's had the opportunity to work on some of the world's top brands, including American Express, Scotiabank, Cadbury, yes please, and the list goes on. Sofia's entrepreneurial spirit and keen interest in media and technology compelled her to launch her latest venture, VidaCher, where Sofia and her team craft compelling stories, as I mentioned, across these multiple platforms. Their rapid success earned it in a feature in LA's premier city guide, Voyage LA, as part of the magazine's Inspiring Stories segment. As part of their commitment to educating clients, Sofia has produced and moderated panel discussions on successfully running startups. Past co-sponsors of these ventures have been Scale LA, which is LA's largest healthcare accelerator. A graduate of Ryerson University's Marketing Management program in Toronto, Sofia has also earned her Master's in Technology and Innovation from Toronto-based Ted Rogers program, ranked by Bloomberg Businessweek as one of the top 25 international MBA programs. And really, I am getting to the end of this kick-ass bio, but I have to share this fun fact. Sofia has worked as an actor in Hollywood, Bollywood, and Hollywood North, aka Toronto. Sofia, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you so much, Louise, for having me. It's so lovely to chat with you this morning. I mean, I don't even know who that person is. I'm like, wow, they sound amazing. International career that they've had, like, woo.
Isn't that right?
Yeah.
I know. I'm always curious to know how people feel when I read their bios, because I'm totally impressed and blown away.
It sounds like someone else. You know, you're just like, who's that person? And then it's one of those things where you're sort of like grinding things out day to day, and you forget, you know, some of these things that you've been up to. That you're like, oh yeah, I remember doing that. Okay, yeah, that's so great.
And I think it's neat that you say that. And that's part of what I love about my show. Well, I would hope that I would love my show.
I love your show. I think it's so great.
Thank you, Sophia. That's really why I like to, that's really what I like to explore, right? From the outside, that's what people see, which is awesome. You have achieved all those things. You've done all those things. You've said you've dreamed, you've worked hard, you've set goals, you've done the work. But then from an outsider's perspective, that's what we see. And we often compare our outsides or our insides, so how we feel about ourselves and our own accomplishments, with other people's outsides, which is your bio.
Exactly. And I think, I mean, I've seen a lot of people sort of get intimidated by those things because, you know, they sort of see this person as like, you know, sort of like what we talked about, a little bit like a superhero, right? They see this like amazing, accomplished person, but really on the, you know, on the inside, I think we're all really much alike. I mean, we all want to be liked, and, you know, we all want to do a good job, and we all want to, you know, feel important and have a purpose in life. So I think it's, you know, I've been learning more and more to kind of like really dig underneath people's bios and really kind of get a chance to really get to know them. And they are so much more, you know, real than their bio allows them to be. And I think that's, to me, that's what's sort of like fascinating about, you know, getting to chat with so many people around the world, you know, like they're just, it's been a delight being able to kind of get to know them, anybody in any capacity. So it's different.
Yeah. So, I mean, so much yes to that. Those who, I've shared it a little bit on my show. I don't think a ton, but I used to, and I still work in HR. I do leadership consulting, but I worked for many years as a recruiter. And I would say to people, bring your resume to life for me. And so now I feel like I get the chance in a totally different capacity. I'm doing that, but I think this is way more fun because I can ask questions that I'm not allowed to ask in a job interview.
Exactly. And we can also just keep going on tangents. We don't have like, you know, we don't have to kind of like stick to sort of time restrictions or like topics. Like we can go wherever we want to go.
Wherever we want to go. So
excited.
So with that said, let's rewind the clock a little bit.
Okay.
And let's go to young Sophia. I'm saying 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, whatever kind of time, you know, you can rewind to and actually have a memory of what is it that you wanted to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be an actor. Believe it or not.
And you did it.
Yeah. That's kind of what's interesting about that is I lived in an apartment building in Rexdale, if you're familiar at all, in Ontario. It's just sort of like on the sort of southwest side of the city. And, you know, like we used to do these little plays all the time. Like we would put up these little skits, and a friend of mine, she always had these prizes that she would be able to like give out. And we got to a point where I kept winning all these little acting awards that people didn't want to play anymore. It was just like, oh, you know, Sophia's going to win them all. So like, I don't want to play anymore. So that was it. Like that's really what I wanted to be. And
that sparked something. Obviously the talent there. Otherwise you wouldn't be winning all those things without any kind of, you know, training or expertise.
Oh, exactly. It was no training, nothing. It was just me, you know, kind of doing my thing. And it got to a point where, you know, I remember my sisters being like complaining because they were like, I don't want to do this anymore because Soph's just going to win all the time.
Which I guess on one hand, yeah, how did that make you feel?
I mean, it was great. It made me think like I was good at something, you know.
Yeah.
that was, you know, you're sort of like, when you're a kid, you're sort of trying to find out like who you are, right? And that for me was a way to go, what am I good at? You know, I liked it, obviously, but it was also just like, obviously there was some level of talent that was there that I was like, okay, I might be onto something. But to be honest, I had done a play when I was a kid. And then we had moved to a place called Woodbridge when I was a teenager. And I really didn't get into acting then. I mean, I think I had a drama class at one point, but then that was really about it. And I really didn't explore the idea of becoming an actor. I just was like, oh yeah, okay, you know, whatever. And then I decided to, like, when I graduated high school, I thought maybe I would go into theater school. But to be honest, it was difficult for me. I come from an immigrant family to be able to go to my family and say, hey, I'm going to go to theater school. Like, that's not really done in my family. You know, we're definitely a lot more practical in that way. So I was like, all right, I'm going to just go into marketing, which is the most creative side of business I can, and know that, you know, it's something a little more practical. So I ended up going to Ryerson's, you know, marketing business program. And so I forgot about it. Like, I just was like, okay, that's it, you know, whatever. And then someone had once approached me about, you know, I was, I think, 6 months out of graduation, and someone had approached me about maybe joining their talent agency. And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever, we'll see. But I was like, I'm going away first, and then I'll come back and we'll see what happens, right? So then I went to India again, completely just forgot about it. And then somehow or another, I ended up, I think I was on set with someone doing background work. And I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. Like, I'm really enjoying this. And so I had finished off my internship, and I said, okay, I'm going to just like get some headshots done. And if I'm not photogenic, I'm just going to, just travel India and go home. That was sort of my plan. And then I got one picture to actually work out. Like, the rest of them were absolutely terrible. But one of them worked out. And then for a week I sat in my apartment and nothing happened. And I was just like, okay, I can't keep doing this. Like, if this is what acting is, like,
I'm out.
Yeah, I'm out, exactly. And so the next week, though, I ended up getting a job. I got, one day that week on a background somewhere. And then the next week I got another job and another job. And like, it just kind of kept snowballing to the point where by the end, I was like, it was about 4 months worth of like solid work every week. And by the end, I was like shooting in Dubai on location, and it was like, out in the desert, and I had never been to Dubai. So like, it was just this incredible experience that I was like, okay, I'm totally hooked. Like, I definitely want to do this. Like, I'm in. And then I came back to Toronto, and I was like, okay, guys, like, look, I have all this like Bollywood experience. Like, let's do this. And, not everybody necessarily cared about that. And it's certainly a different market. And so I just kept grinding it out and like, just doing short films and commercials and things like that. And then the opportunity basically came up to come to LA. And again, I was not thinking that, it was going to happen. I just, I had visited once, and I just thought, oh my gosh, LA is such a difficult city. I don't know that I can handle being here. And so I, went back for like 10 years. And then suddenly I was working in social media, because that was the other thing, is like, I was also like focused on marketing and sort of like, doing stuff on that one. So essentially I had like 2 careers going at the same time, which essentially I still do. And so I was just, so a colleague of mine was like, why are you not here in LA? And they're like, LA would be lucky to have you. And I was like, oh, okay. That's interesting. And I had always wanted to take this class, Upright Citizens Brigade, with it's run by Amy Poehler and a number of other people. And it had been on my bucket list to just go and take a class. So I was like, okay, well, I work remotely. I work in social media. I'll just go and take the class at night and then just work during the day. And that was sort of the plan. I would just go for 3 months and then take the class and then return back to Toronto. And it's just all these amazing things happened, and all these amazing people started to, come into my life. And I thought, oh my gosh, I totally need to be here. And it was interesting because like I had gone back and I told my dad everything that was happening. And he was like, all right, you got this LA thing out of your system. You're back on track. Let's just get you back focused on work. Let's just, and then I told him like, hey, this opportunity came up for, to work at USC and all this stuff. And he was like, oh, you got to go back. And I'm like, I know. Wow. So that was sort of like the beginning of the journey of like, kind of making the transition to LA. But I didn't really know that it was going to happen. And then it did. And so it was one of those things where I was like, okay, sometimes you just got to like follow the universe and it'll tell you where to go. So
I love that. I love everything that you just shared. And that last statement, I resisted that. I didn't even know what that meant. You'd listen to the universe and just follow it kind of where it tells you to go. I didn't even know what that meant until I turned 40, which was 4 years ago, where I really feel like I was slammed up against the universe saying, it was giving whispers to me along the way, and the whispers got a little louder. And then it was like I ran into a brick wall. And so I so agree. Not every door that you attempt to bang down is actually meant for you.
It's not. I mean, and that's the thing, is that for the longest time, like you, I also didn't listen. I was like, forging, like, I mean, yeah. I was thinking, I had actually started my business because I wanted to be able to go to auditions, because I was finding like the jobs that I had, it was like tough to keep asking to go on a lunch break all the time to like go to an audition. So I was like, you know what, if I'm my own boss, I can go whenever I want, quote unquote. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And that was for me, like, I know other people have different reasons for why they start their businesses, but for me to be able to kind of get through the challenges and the pitfalls of actually running a company, for me, it was that freedom, quote unquote. I mean, because really, you are sort of tied to your company, but it was, that was what got me through those things. That was what kept me going through the difficult times. But there was definitely a moment that I hit a wall and I just broke down. I was having back issues at that time, and I was bedridden for a couple of weeks, and it was I was like, okay, I don't know what else there is here. And I can't do anything. I'm numb. I'm like a zombie. And I just took a month off basically and did nothing. And then I was regrouped and I said, okay, you know what? Maybe I am not these things that I tell myself I am. I'm a this and I'm a this and I have all these titles. And I was like, well, what if I'm nothing? What if I don't have any titles? I'm not an actor. I'm not a marketer. I'm not any of those things. I am just someone that will do anything that someone asks me to do. Like I am just anything. I'm an amoeba, basically. And so I did that, and it was so freeing just to be able to just not have these expectations of what I'm supposed to be doing and live up to titles that I couldn't necessarily live up to. And that was what sort of like made me realize that I was like, okay, I need to be listening a little bit more as to like what's really going on. And sometimes when there's things that are not working and I just keep, just pushing against something, it's a moment to let go and the funny thing about it is that I find, I still kind of struggle with it sometimes because you're trying, right? I mean, you have to put some effort into doing anything, but I find when I take a moment to just let go, it comes together. It comes together in the way that it's supposed to, in the way that...
Not the way that you necessarily imagine.
Not in the way I necessarily imagined. I mean, I can tell you this, that I never imagined... If you had asked me this question, like, would you be sitting here in LA talking to Louise 5 years ago? I would have been, you are crazy. Like, no way. Like, that would not be happening.
In a superhero phone booth?
Exactly, in a little phone booth here in, downtown Los Angeles, and, in a co-working space, like with all these wonderful people that I've met, like I would have just said, you're not, like, there's no way, like I cannot see that path at all. And so it's just following along and just, I really, someone had actually mentioned to me that like there's a motto sort of in Alcoholics Anonymous where it's just this idea of like one foot in front of the other. And I really just have followed that throughout, like, sort of following that breakdown where I'm like, I'm just going to put one foot in front of the other and I am not going to have expectations. I'm just going to like go through the motions and do what I think is the right thing in the moment and leave the rest to whatever is supposed to happen.
Oh my goodness, there's so many gems that you just dropped there and so many things.
My God. I could be like ramble all day.
I love it. There's no rambling at all. What I wanted to just kind of go back to was something that you said. I thought was really brave what you just shared, and I know it will resonate with a lot of my listeners in terms of doing all the things, checking all the boxes, having all these expectations and titles and things that you're trying to strive for and achieve. And those are not bad things in and of themselves. It's good to have goals. I mean, I don't want to say it's not, that is good, but then how do you, and I think you admitted that it's still a work in progress, and I think it is for everyone, but how do you balance the striving and going for your goals with the letting go?
That's a good question. I don't
know how I would answer that question, to be honest, so I might be asking for a friend.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's an incredible question, and I wrestle with it on a daily basis in that sense, because it's not easy to always know, because sometimes it's one thing to say, don't give up. And then it's on the other, and I think sometimes we see that in society where we get these messages of don't give up, just keep fighting. And I think that applies to some people, but I don't think that it necessarily applies to everybody. And I think I'm in that category of people I see sometimes some of my colleagues, particularly here in LA, most people here are here for a reason. They are there to be successful, and they've, like me, I mean, they've left family and friends and a network of people wherever they've gone, and they've come here. So they don't want to come back and say, I didn't do anything with my life, or I didn't, do what I set out to do. So they're very driven. And I think what I see sometimes, though, and I know that I recognize that in myself in the past, is you get to this point where you're driving so hard that in some cases you're kind of driving other people crazy, really.
In a way.
In a way, exactly. And you are just so singularly focused. And what I've sort of discovered, particularly even through improv, is the fact that you when working with other people and really taking into account what other people have to say and bring to the table, it elevates you to levels that you would never be able to get to by yourself. And that was, something for me when I got here, was like, no, I'm here to collaborate and to learn and to grow with other people, because I can grow with them in ways that I could never grow by myself. So I think, to sort of come back to your question, I think it's looking to see, if I'm finding it's hurting me, or, if I'm really now much more conscious of like where my anxiety sits. Like I tend to have it sit in my lower back. And that's what I also discovered, is the fact that I am that person where, I get really nervous and I will internalize it. And I'll just like, I'll stiffen up and I'll just end up with this like chronic pain. And I recognize that. And I say to myself, okay, hey, this is happening to you. It probably means whatever you're trying to do isn't working, and it's time to step back and regroup a little bit. So that's where I look to, not getting to the point where I'm bedridden for 2 weeks. I look and I step back and I say, okay, maybe this isn't working out. Maybe this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. And let's pivot a little bit, or let's regroup, or just take a moment to stop for a second and say, okay, let's let the universe sort of make that call, and I watch to see. That's the other thing for me, is like, I'm a lot more, in tune to what I'm seeing. So like if I'm seeing an opportunity and it kind of keeps coming up a lot, I'll know that it's the right thing to do. And that actually happened with me when I decided to go to the American film market. I had a friend of mine that I had met when I went to a conference in Montreal, and we kept in touch, and he lives in the Netherlands, and he used to saying, hey, I'm going to be at AFM. And I was like, oh, that's nice. I'll just, meet you up for you with a drink, blah, 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 blah. And then suddenly, like, the name kept popping up all the time. And it was just like everywhere that I was going, in conversations and people I was talking to, and everywhere I would go, I kept seeing AFM pop up. And I thought, oh, I feel like I'm supposed to be there. Like, I feel like this is where I'm supposed to be. So I ended up buying a ticket for a day, and I went and I met the most incredible people, and it was just an amazing experience. And I was like, okay, that's, and it didn't feel like it was such an effort. It didn't feel like it was such a struggle. And that's how I knew that it was the right fit. And I guess that's what I look for, is like, yes, it's going to be work, but is it, a struggle in the sense that I am feeling depleted, or I am feeling despair about it, or if I'm not feeling confident about it, then I'm like, then I know that it's the wrong thing.
I think
that's the way I look at it.
I think that's a really awesome and fulsome answer. I used to be a lifeguard, and in your answer, it reminded me of my lifeguarding days, where you would come across someone, and if they were, injured at the pool or whatever, this is certainly just done during training, you would pause, you would look, you would listen, and you would feel. So I'm not going to go into the lifeguarding aspect of what I'm looking for, listening for, and feeling for. But it's like, wow, that's exactly what you just did. You paused, and you actually kind of connected with your own head, heart, and body.
Exactly. And it's interesting, because when you do that, I mean, a lot of times you kind of can get sucked into the busyness of things. And you get to this place where, if you reflect back on like, well, what did I do this week? You're like, not a lot. Or not a lot that kind of matters. Mm-hmm. And that's where I am finding, as I take time to reflect more, I'm actually much more strategic about what I do and why I do things. And I ask myself those questions. Okay, why are we doing this? I have this little internal voice where, it sort of asks me these questions of like, hey, okay, so why are we doing this exactly? And I have to answer it. I have to go, well, we're doing it for this reason. And then I uncover a little bit more. Okay, well, why are we doing that? Is this maybe an ego thing, or are you feeling insecure about something that it's fulfilling? And then when we uncover and then unpack it, it's one of those things where you go, oh, that's the real reason. And so do we really need to be doing this or not? And that's where, I try to become, I'm better at being good with myself, because there was a lot of times when I would beat myself up about things. Like if I had done something wrong, or if I'd made a mistake, I would just keep, rehashing it in my head. And now I get to a place where I'm like, okay, all right, you made a mistake. All right, that's cool. Like, it's going to be fine. You're going to be fine. Everything's going to be okay. And you're just, life's going to move on. And you learn from that. And that's the biggest thing for me is like, okay, make sure you learn it. Like, yes, you're going to make mistakes, but don't make that one again, So I guess that's the thing is like just taking much more time to be reflective allows you to actually be more productive and be more successful.
There's a lot of, I think there'll be people listening who have a lot of resistance to that statement. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. I do think that I know this to be true as well. I love research. So I like to read science and research documents and stuff, and then try to bring it to life, specifically with the women that I coach and the businesses I work with. But we wear busyness like a badge of honor. We really do.
Yeah, I mean, it's like one of these things where we love to tell people, oh, I'm so busy. I'm so busy. And the thing about it is that, okay, we're busy, but like, what I try to do, and especially like as I was coming back and forth between Toronto and Los Angeles, I would have 90 days at a time. And, you have to make the most of that time, because the other thing for me was that I wasn't sure when I was going to come back. So I'm like, I'm on a timeline here, and I need to make sure that I have not kind of wasted 90 days. So I had this sort of like list of like, okay, what am I trying to accomplish and get something done in that 90 days? And so that for me was how I looked at what success was on the other side of it. I'm like, okay, after 90 days, do I feel like I put in everything I could? I did all the things that I wanted to do. I accomplished all the things. If I did, then I'm like, okay, great. That was a wonderful use of those 90 days. But that's the thing is like, it wasn't that I was like busy all the time. It was just that I was like putting focus onto the areas of the things that I wanted to accomplish, because at the end of the 90 days, I wanted to be able to say, I did that. And I wasn't, it's not something that I necessarily was able to do every day all the time. It was just being able to really not be mad at myself, feeling like, oh, there was, an opportunity and you wasted it, basically. Like, because I mean, that's the real crux of it all is like, you don't know when it's coming back. That's the thing is like, yes, you can say, oh, okay, whatever. But really, if you don't do it, then it's just going to pass you by. And then you don't get to necessarily jump on that train again. And so that's for me is a lot of times how I live my life. I just kind of like, if the opportunity passes, I just take it. If it feels right, you know what I mean? Right. But it's, but I'm aware of the fact that, there may not be another opportunity tomorrow. So I'm like, okay, and the other part of it is like, as an entrepreneur, what I have learned more and more is like, the most valuable resource is not money, it's time. It's the time that it takes to develop things and to put things in motion. You can't take it. You can't buy it again. You can't, once it's gone, it's finished. And so it's like, have you taken the opportunities to lay groundwork for a lot of things? And that's how it sort of leads to that success. But it's taking that and recognizing, what that value is.
That leads me to a bigger question, looking at life, I guess, more holistically than just work. How would you define for you?
Yeah.
What does a well-lived life look like?
For me, it's it's a combination of, yes, doing work that I love because I enjoy the work that I do, you know, in terms of like the acting and the producing, and as well as the, you know, I love working with clients and making sure that that I feel like they've been helped. But it's also the memories that I've had with my family and my friends, and even romantic relationships. Like, all of those things are, for me, you know, what it means to be a well-lived life, and just the wonderful relationships that I've forged with amazing, incredible people, and the experiences that I've gotten to do, like all the traveling and all of the things that I've been able to see and do, you know, in Spain and Argentina and India and in Canada. Like, yeah, for me, it is that, you know, that see and feel and smell and touch and all of those beautiful experiences that I get to say that I had done. And, you know, and not for bragging rights, but just really for, you know, these mind-blowing experiences. So like that for me is what success is about. And I've been so lucky that I have met such incredible people that I get to stay in touch with all the time through different parts of the world. And I'm just like, it's just so amazing that I get to do that.
It's just very full, very enriching.
Absolutely. And that's the thing is, like, I don't know, you get to learn, you know, and you get to grow. And I feel like it's interesting because I think I remember reading an interview with someone, I can't remember who it was, but it was this idea of like, you get to go back to the person you were supposed to be as you get older. I feel that a lot. I feel like as I've gotten older, I've reverted back to this like person who is just full of life and wanting to always sort of bring other people into that joy and share it with other people. And I get to do that more and more as I've gotten older and older. And that's, I think, really interesting that I find myself, you know, letting go of a lot of things that may have upset me in the past, and just, I don't know, like, I guess it's like I'm becoming the person I was supposed to be when I was born, I guess. Maybe I'll get there by the time, like, it's all over.
Yeah, well, I think that's a really interesting point for listeners to reflect on. I love that you've shared that with us, you know, that you're in the process of becoming the person that you were meant to be when you were born. It's actually quite touching for me, and I depending, I think, on where people are in their life's journey, that will resonate obviously with people differently. Had you said that to me 10 years ago, I would have like, what the heck? I don't even understand what she's saying. I don't even get that. And now, you know, I very much would echo what you just said, and I feel somewhat sad actually, but at the same time very inspired, because that's the right path. It makes me feel then that it's confirmation or validation that it is the right path, because as you reflected on those, you know, your earlier years and when you were sharing that you wanted to be an actor when you were little, and why, and, you know, that how way that made you feel, and now you're going back to those very roots. And one of my boys, who's now 16, when he was 2 years old, one of the things that I remember him, after he watched a particular movie, he would continue for the next number of months, quote a woman in the movie. He would throw his arm up in the air. It was actually Mary Poppins. Mary Poppins is one of my favorite movies. He would yell, "Vote for women." And it actually moved me then, because years before then, when I was a child, I was all about, well, why can't women do these things? Why can't girls do these things? Why isn't there a basketball? Why is NBA only for boys? I want to be in the NBA. And so there were lots of things along the way that brought me back to that. And you just reminded me of that. So thank you for that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's you sort of touching on the idea of girls. I think, you know, I do sometimes see that we get pushed out of things and we are not taken seriously. And I know that happens to me a lot as well. But I guess the thing is that I look at it as, I get it. It's not that I don't acknowledge it. It's just the fact that I'm like, okay, what can I do about it? You know, it's one of those things where you just go, well, I could really just agree with everybody and then just go, well, what's the point? Or I can just go, you know what? I'm just going to forge my own path. And that's what I have sort of found that's worked really well for me, is that, you know, there are times when I felt like, I mean, even when I was, you know, finishing off my MBA, I couldn't get a job. Like I had just finished and I was unable to find a job in, you know, in broadcasting and where I think I wanted to go. And I was also considering like doing an internship in LA at one of the studios, and it wasn't working. And I thought, you know, I had gotten an opportunity that I just felt like, you know, if I take this, it's going to take me down the path that I don't want to go on. And it was interesting because I was getting pressure from people to just, come on, just do it. Like, you know, why are you trying to give this opportunity up? And I just felt like, no, it's the wrong thing to do. And I felt like, you know what, fine, I'm just going to do things myself. You know, I'm going to do things in my own way. And it took a lot longer, but at the end of the day, I'm happier. I am definitely a lot more independent, where, you know, I'm not, I don't feel that fear in that same capacity. Don't get me wrong, I still do, but not in the same capacity where I'm like, look, you know, if this doesn't work out, I'll go another way. Like, you know, I'll just take a different direction. And I'm confident in my ability to figure it out.
I love that you brought up the word fear. It comes up a lot in what stops people or prevents people from taking action or moving forward or making a shift or a change or a pivot. And you, through what you've shared so far and what I know of you, you've taken a lot of courageous steps, whether you knew it at the time or you didn't. No, it wouldn't. Maybe you wouldn't have labeled it a courageous step. We're labeling it. I'm labeling it a courageous step. Many courageous steps.
Okay, I will let you label it.
Okay. So talk to us a little bit and help us understand how, in the moment when you're feeling fearful, because we all feel fear. That's part of our human, that's our reptilian brain. That's part of our makeup. That's why we exist on this earth today, because we've felt fear and run to safety.
Yep.
So when we feel fear, our natural instinct is to run to safety, but oftentimes that does not help us get to where we need to be. How do you navigate those feelings of fear and doing it anyway?
Okay. Well, that's the key part, is doing it anyway. It's just, you know, acknowledging it and saying, okay, I'm in this now. So here we go. I think it's, you know, I think the biggest thing is I have found that it's been easier to deal with the fear when I have people in my life that I can turn to and say, you know, I'm scared about this, and, you know, I need help, you know, and I need help. Like, and I don't necessarily need help in, like, you know, doing anything, more just like, hear me out, or let me, you know, talk me through this. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes people come back with solutions, even though you're resisting it. I mean, I had a situation last year where I got put in a position where I was going to fail. Like, it felt so impossible. And I reached out to one of my best friends and I was like, you know, I'm terrified, like this thing is happening. And she's like, well, why don't you try to find like another person to help you? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't think I can, like, I'm not really sure. Like, and so I was like, you know what? I had no choice. I'm just going to try. And so I did end up reaching out to somebody, and I did end up getting the help that I needed to be able to, you know, get that task accomplished. And I mean, if it hadn't have been for her helping me through that, I wouldn't have, you know, I definitely would have just, my little reptilian brain would have just like put the covers over my head. That would have been the end of it. So, you know, I think also for me, it's this idea of like, again, like sort of one foot in front of the other, you know, not looking too far forward. You know, yes, you have to look forward to kind of know where you're going, but not too far out where it's like daunting. It's just, and that was one of the other things that I actually learned when I started to play better golf. That was the other thing. I love golf. I used to work on a golf course as well. I was one of the cart girls, and I, you know, would always aim for the pin, you know, and I was always like, oh my God. And it felt so daunting when you're sitting there, you know, trying to tee off. Like, you're just like, oh my God, like that pin is like, 180 yards or whatever. And I would always find that I was like, veering to the left or to the right, or I was going all over the place. Like the ball was, so I ended up like always having to like, bring myself back onto the fairway because I was already, and so one day I just went, you know what if I just aimed at the small marker that's kind of closer and see how that does, And so when I started to do that, I was like, it just exponentially, improved my game because I was not so far focused that I was like, I could barely see the pin. It was these small little goals that were in front of me that eventually led me to the pin. And so I guess that's the golf analogy that I live my life by. But essentially it's, finding those little smaller wins and just focusing on that to be able to kind of get to the bigger thing. So that's where I can alleviate some of that fear because I'm just focused on the small things. That actually happened when I was doing I did a keynote speech for a MedTech conference in Irvine. And, I was like, oh my God, I'm a keynote speaker. Like, oh my, like, holy, like what? And so again, I was overwhelmed and terrified. And I can tell you the organizer was like, oh my God, you're going to be fine. I'm like, no, I'm not. I don't know I'm going to do this. And I did that. I broke it up into smaller steps. And I was like, okay, what if I just did this one section? Okay, what will that one section look like? Okay, what about this other section? And then suddenly things started to snowball. But I became a lot more confident about it and I was able to get through it. Because I broke it up into these like little chunks and I didn't focus so much on like this bigger grandiose thing. And then by the time I did it, I was like, oh yeah, okay, this is fine. I can totally do this. So I guess that's how I deal with it is breaking down into smaller steps and not looking too far forward.
So much richness in that. You've also mentioned, the idea of confidence. You've mentioned the idea of support. And I want to give the chance to give you a shout out to one special friend of yours who has been there in terms of support. In fact, was support to you 10 minutes before the show started. So can we give him a shout
yes, Nick Sewell. Thank you so much for everything. Nick is actually a new friend of mine that I connected with here in LA, and he has just been incredible. He's been so lovely, and we have such deep, amazing conversations. And I'm really lucky to have met him.
So thank you, new friend Nick. And also, this does not diminish all of the wonderful old and new friends that Sophia has as well. So shout out to all of those wonderful
all of those people. I love you all. You guys are
all
amazing.
of Sophia's people. So do you have a legacy that you'd like to leave behind? Have you ever thought about your legacy?
That's a good question. I think it's more, in the work that I do, I want to leave behind work that inspires people. That's really up to them, but I think I just want to leave work that I feel like I feel good about, that I feel like I did the best I could with it. That's one part of it, but I think a bigger part of it is leaving behind, hopefully that people will remember me as someone that they felt joy with, that maybe something, inspired them that I did this for me was like one of the big moments was I had an intern that I worked with, and we didn't have a lot to give him in the sense of like monetary compensation, but I really was like, I'm going to take that time to spend with this young man just to like teach him the ropes on analytics and social media. And he was so great about, we would have Friday afternoon meetings and we would just like really, I would take him through and ask him a lot of questions. And he was fantastic. He was amazing. And then what he ended up telling me was the fact that he had, from that experience, decided to change his major and went on into analytics, and now works for a consulting firm, and he's doing so great. And he said, thank you so much. I wouldn't have been able to do this without you. And I just that just brought me so much joy, just knowing that, me spending that time with this, young person really helped to shape his future. And
It was worth a lot more than the money that one could have paid.
right, exactly. More than the money that we would have paid him. And I mean, he's, I'm sure making, quite a lot of money now, but that's for me, like when I get to hear stories like that, where, the small thing that I've done to, hopefully help somebody is something that has led them to a way of life or something, whether it's a job or otherwise, that has really made their life better. And I think that's, for me, what I want to leave behind, is just people who hopefully think of me and think of, and are joyful and maybe are changed because they remember something I said that allowed them to make their life, make their life better. So that is really important to me. And I try my best to sort of live my life that way every day, where I'm cognizant of the experiences that I have with people on a daily basis. And I hope and I strive to make sure that experience that they have with me is one where they walk away feeling good. Actually, that's actually, it's interesting because I realized that I got that a lot from my dad. So my dad is a physician in Toronto, and he has said to me, and I've done some little interviews with him, and he said, for him, his job is that if he has a patient that comes to see him, he feels like he hasn't done his job unless that patient has felt like good about that interaction. And even if he necessarily can't help them in, whatever it is that they're dealing with, it's the fact that they feel good that they've saw him and they smile a little bit in knowing that they just had a good time with him. And so I guess that's where I got that from, is just, that idea of like, he is really cognizant of making sure that every interaction that he has is a positive one. And I try to do that in my own little way.
Beautiful, meaningful legacy. That'd be beautiful for more folks to think. The world would be a changed place if that small intention each day.
I think so. I mean, and I think it's interesting because I feel like if you're in a place where you're not doing that, I feel like, I see people who do that all the time, and I think to myself, there's something going on with you. And I think that's the time where maybe you need to start to reflect and say to yourself, okay, hey, what's going on with me? Maybe I need to take care of myself so that I can then, bring joy to other people. So I don't know.
So, and so thank you for all of that. And kudos to your dad and your family. We didn't get to explore much of your family, but it's a wonderful, I find it fascinating to look back and reflect on the early influences as well. So beautiful that you had an opportunity to tie in that with your dad. So very quickly, we've got a couple of minutes left. Sofia, how can people reach you? People are intrigued by you, want to know more about you, your story, and the wonderful branding and marketing work that you do. How can people reach you?
So I think the best way to do that is through just going to the website. So it's VidaCher.com. You can also just email me at Sofia, Sofia, at VidaCherDigital.com. I think those are probably the best ways to get a hold of me if you want to talk to me a little bit further. Or, I mean, even LinkedIn, you can find me, Sofia Stefou, on LinkedIn. Those are probably the easiest ways to get a hold of me.
Awesome. I will put those in the show notes. So those driving, don't worry, go to the show notes and you can get Sofia's contact information. Sofia, thank you so much for sharing your time. As you mentioned in the middle of the interview, there's nothing more valuable than time. I totally believe that. I know that to be true. So thank you for sharing yours with me.
Well, and thank you very much for sharing your time with me. I really appreciate it. It's been so lovely chatting with you and letting me chat. So I appreciate it. And I thank you for letting me be a guest on your show. It's been
absolutely.
I've learned so much from your guests. So hopefully you learned something from me.
Thank you, Sofia. I'm sure they did. And of course, thank you to all of you as well, my loyal listeners. And remind you that information about my show and our awesome guest today, Sofia, can be found at louisehreed.com. Also, a big shout out to my producer, Cameron Steele at Contact Talk Radio Network. This show would not exist without you, so thank you. And in closing, I'd like to leave you with the very same poem, the same moving and inspiring poem that I kicked off the show with. Come to the edge, he said, we can't, we're afraid. Come to the edge, he said, we can't, we will fall. Come to the edge, he said, and so they came, and he pushed them, and they flew. So until next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, I'm Louise H. Reed, wishing all of you a bold and courageous day. Go fly, my friends. Goodbye.
Thank you so much for that, Louise.